The back and forth over deportations of illegal immigrants continues. Late last week, in fact, a judge blocked President Trump's administration from using an 18th century wartime law to deport some Venezuelan migrants who are said to be gang members. We want to go deeper into this ruling with immigration attorney and former law professor Susham M. Susham, welcome to Portland's Afternoon News.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Trump's mid-March proclamation that Tren de Aragua is a terrorist group seemed to pave the way for invoking this 1798 Alien Enemies Act as a way to justify expedited deportations. But U.S. District Judge Fernando Rodriguez in Brownsville, Texas, ruled that the Trump administration exceeded the scope of the law. We should note that the judge in question here is a Trump appointee. Now, as a lawyer, your response, first of all, to the logic behind the judge's ruling.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with about 2/3 of it. I've been on the media quite a bit recently on this issue, and the Alien Enemies Act, as you point out, is quite an old law, over 200 years old, from 1798. And the last time it was used was during World War II, the Japanese internment camps. And so that law is as laws are from Congress. And it was very specific that it could only be used under certain categories. And the judge had ruled that those categories didn't fit. And that's why this ruling is so huge, because even though this has been talked about before in the viewpoint of like habeas and due process rights, this is the first judge to really have a permanent hold on that Alien Enemies Act for the actual merits, the underlying reason of the Alien Enemies Act.
So the permanently part did catch my attention. When it comes to the law, is anything really permanent?
I mean, there definitely will be an appellate process here. So it'll likely go to the Fifth Circuit first, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then they'll decide on it, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court. Now, there are other cases going along at the same time. So the Supreme Court could look at all of them and consolidate the other cases as well. But in terms of the permanency, what I mean by that earlier is the judge ruled on the merits of the Alien Enemies Act. And specifically, the judge found a few reasons why the Alien Enemies Act could not be used here. So the two major reasons are, first, that it's not an invasion. Because this is like a group, not a military or organized group. And then the second is the Alien Enemies Act states that it has to be by a nation or government, which we also don't have here. So those are the two primary reasons that the judge had ruled that the Alien Enemies Act cannot be used here to deport people quickly without giving them a court hearing or due process.
Am I recalling correctly, though, that the administration is claiming that Tren de Aragua is operating with the backing of the Venezuelan government?
I mean, I think the government is arguing more broadly than that. So that could be one of their subcomponent arguments. But I think they're broadly arguing that they've deemed this a terrorist group, and therefore it's an invasion, and therefore it doesn't need to be expanded to like nations or governments. Now, I think that's overbroad, and that's also what this judge, as you correctly pointed out, an appointee from the Trump administration, had found as well.
Okay. Again, we are talking with Susham M here on Portland's Afternoon News, talking about legal challenges to the Trump administration's deportation efforts. And quickly, I want to branch out to the broader issue, too, of federal judges ruling on cases that put these roadblocks up for President Trump's efforts to carry out his agenda. Some say that the judges are doing their constitutional duty, and then others are calling them activists and claim that they are overstepping their authority. Broadly speaking now, you don't have to go case by case, but broadly speaking, which side do you think you're leaning toward in that argument?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards the law, and this is something I've practiced a long time, almost 15 years, immigration law. And it's quite clear. I mean, again, if we just take a step back, not only is this law from 1798, and it's, been used only a few very careful times against like World War II was the last time it was used. But then ever since that era to now, people that are in deportation proceedings, they get a court hearing. And that's a good thing, because there's also other laws made by Congress. Only Congress can make laws made by Congress that give them relief, give them an ability to stay here. And we want those laws, because those laws like for example, one that I taught is asylum refugee law. If somebody is afraid to go back to their home country because they would be tortured, persecuted, or killed, we don't want to deport individuals that could be, killed, and including children. So that if we start deporting people without a court hearing, these are the things that they could be missing out on. In fact, Mr. Garcia, which has the most amount of news on this issue, and the Alien Enemies Act was used against him. He's rotting in a brutal jail in El Salvador. He actually had that protection. He had a protection from a full trial before the Trump administration called withholding of removal, where a judge had found that it's more likely than not that he would be tortured or persecuted if he was returned, and he still was deported.
Would you agree that in his case, at least, he did have due process because he went through at least 2 immigration hearings, and the rulings in both cases were that he needed to be deported? And in fact, one judge, as I understand it, said there is evidence to suggest he is a gang member.
No, I would not agree with that. He did have due process before the Trump administration invoked the Alien Enemies Act, but that was before this was invoked. And in that due process, he had a full trial, and the judge actually found that he is deserving of protection.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time here on Portland's Afternoon News and your expertise.
My honor. Thanks for having me. I hope you have a good day.